Roger, give me that gun, Ron. Right along that back, baby. Aim hot. Clear hot.
Ladies, gents, how's it going? Random Gary here, aka Gary Proud. If you don't know why this channel is here, it's basically I'm a Gallantry recipient from the British military. I received Britain's second highest award for Gallantry, so one below the Victoria Cross, back in 2010. And what I've been doing is I've been reacting to recipients of Gallantry awards from across our partner nations, the nations that we happily fight alongside, and reviewing and reacting to acts of gallantry. Today is no exception. We're going to be reacting to one of only 3 people ever to receive a Victoria Cross and Bar, Charles Upham VC. We're just going to be having a look at This Is Your Life. I'm going to be viewing it first time with you guys. Let's check it out. Oh, and by the way, I am doing my 2,000 subscriber giveaway. It was the last video I done. I'll try to put a link in here now. I don't know if I can. If that doesn't work, there will be a link at the end, so there's your incentive to watch right until the end. As always, please comment below. Am I seeing the same things you're seeing? Is there anything you're seeing that I haven't seen? Let's get on with the video.
Good evening and welcome to This Is Your Life. Tonight you're going to be meeting one of our country's...
Oh, by the way, for those of you from across the pond, This Is Your Life. This was something that the UK TV did. A couple of other nations did it here, as we'll see. New Zealand did it. And basically, it takes people in the public spotlight and it replays their life. It brings back people who were important to them in the past, and they have this big celebration of the things that they managed to achieve in their life.
Heroes. A person that most of us have heard of, but very few of us really know that much about. And that's because this person has never sought publicity or personal gain from what has been a truly remarkable life.
So somebody who's never searched for publicity or gain, he's going to be really happy about this, isn't he?
We're at Wellington's Fort Dorset. Just through these curtains is a cocktail party being thrown in honour of Their Excellencies the Governor-General, Sir David Beatty and Lady Beatty. Well, let's go and join the party.
Oh, no. I feel anxious, and it's not even me he's coming to interview, you know?
Your Excellency, I'd like to apologise for
look at
on your
that
cocktail.
Look at that. Heads down. So this is Charles Upham here on the left. Already I'm seeing lots of defensive body posturing here. Shoulders have slumped, heads down, the hands. They appear to be fidgeting. They're across his body as well. Lots of defensive position here. He has no doubt in his mind that these cameras are here for him. And I don't think we could see him in a worse position than he is in right now. This really is not for him.
This evening, but then you, well, you do know exactly why I'm here, don't you?
Yes, I do.
As a matter of fact, you've been a great deal of help in getting our subject here to Wellington tonight without
Zero eye
the person
contact,
being aware of what was about to happen.
Sabotage wasn't my long suit.
willing the earth.
Well, you've been a tremendous amount of help. I need some more help, however. I wonder if... Sir, can I ask you, please, to read to me what it says on the cover of this book?
This is your life, Charles Upham.
Captain Upham, I would feel very privileged indeed if you would join me in a trip back to the Avalon television studios for what is going to be a very special television program. Thank you.
It's so awkward. By all means, it seems like the presenter is quite humbled to be in his presence. It seems like he genuinely thinks he's doing a great thing for Charles Upham here, but you never treat people how you want to be treated yourself. You always treat people how they want to be treated, and I get the feeling he does not want to be treated this way. Leave him alone, in my opinion. We'll watch through it. We'll create a bit of a celebration for him, bless him. But there's ways you can do things without putting people in uncomfortable positions, and I feel like he's in an uncomfortable position, bless him.
It's the story of a man who has 2 Victoria Crosses. This is the Victoria Cross, created in 1856 as the supreme award for gallantry in the face of the enemy. It's the highest of all honours that the sovereign can bestow, and is open to all who serve in or with the forces of the British Crown. Since its inauguration in 1856, only 3 people have been awarded the VC twice. This double Victoria Cross is known more correctly as the VC and Bar.
So 2 of those 3 people were from the medical corps within the military, and they done multiple acts of gallant on the battlefield trying to save other lives.
In the Second World War, 196 Victoria Crosses were awarded. Only 1 person received 2. His name was Captain Charles Hazlitt Upham.
Again, this is not his natural environment. I'm sure he's grateful. I'm sure he's humbled. It's just not for him.
Charles, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us tonight as we tell your story. A story that began in Christchurch on the 21st of September.
Again, look at this body language. This is the polar opposite that you would expect of a decisive, an incredible military leader. Feet are flat, the hands are crossed in front of the body, the head is down. I've had it on occasions where people read out my citation, and it feels like they're reading out something about somebody else. You disconnect yourself from it, because if you listen to it, it can be quite emotional, shall we say. It can be quite you genuinely feel like they're not reading about you. And if you were to sit there and really think and contemplate, this is about me, it would just overwhelm you. It really would. And I see this in Charles Upham. I see somebody who's imagining he's not listening about himself and almost trying to distance himself so he can conduct himself in a professional way.
In
Does that make sense?
1908, you were born the son of a Christchurch lawyer. You grew up at this house at number 32 Gloucester Street and received a good Canterbury education at Waihi Preparatory School near Timaru, and later, you can see the picture there, at Christ's College in Christchurch. Brigadier Jim Burrows. Please welcome him along.
I love seeing these old boys together. And it's something that I feel very, very lucky that we have today. We have the ability to communicate across vast areas, to be able to see faces, to be able to have conversations that these old boys just could not have. They almost went home from war. And if they were lucky, they had somebody local who fought with them. Quite often, the people they fought with were dispersed right across the country. And my heart just goes out to them every time I see them meeting up. I hope that they were able to enjoy one another's company on many, many occasions.
Brigadier Burrows, please join us here on the set of This Is Your Life.
He lets the brigadier sit down first.
I know that you and Charles particularly have shared some remarkable times together. I'm sure the events that took place in May of 1941 on the island of Crete are still strong memories for both yourself and Charles. On the morning of the 20th of May, the German invasion of Crete began, and what started as a distant drone became an ear-shattering roar, as hundreds of German aircraft came overhead to release a human cargo of thousands of German paratroopers. They faced a brave but ill-equipped army of British, Greek, Australian and New Zealand soldiers. With no air support, little artillery and communications wrecked by endless enemy air attacks, the Kiwis' job was to defend one of the prime targets, Maleme Airfield. In the confusion of battle that followed, the Germans gained a foothold on Maleme, but on the night of the 21st of May, the 20th Battalion, under the command of the then Major Burrows, as well as the Maori Battalion, were to counter-attack. Well, to succeed, as you well remember, you needed the cover of darkness, but as dawn broke, it was clear that the advance frustratingly close to success would have to be called off. Brigadier Burrows, you mentioned when you came on the show tonight about remembering Charles's voice. Now, that was a recollection from that particular battle, was it not?
Yes, Charles's voice.
It's amazing the detail that you remember from battle. I remember voices. I remember pitches and tones of voices. Not so much the sound, the surrounding sound. I wonder if that was a bit of a survival instinct, so not to remember things like blasts and bullets and stuff like that. But people, yeah, that's a really interesting insight I've never thought about before. I remember the people, their reactions, what they were saying, how they were saying it. Less so about the big noisy things that were very dangerous that were going on around us. Yeah. Please comment below if you've been involved in an incident like this here. What is it you remember? Because I think that we all get imprinted with these really vivid memories. What is really vivid to you? And actually, you know, do you remember everything as per the rest of the guys who were with you? Interesting.
Many other sights and sounds that night that frankly are better forgotten. But Charles shouting encouragement to his men, and I wonder if he knows that same sound that night was a great encouragement also to me.
So this was the beginning of Charles's first Victoria Cross, was it not?
Yes, we had a very difficult night indeed. We were late on the start mark, but finally we were caught in broad daylight, in open ground.
They're on an airfield. They're protecting an airfield. They're late off the start line. You wouldn't always get to the start line. So the start line is the final kind of point of the preparation for your battle. And the start point is where you launch. You launch into your execution, your actual battle phases. So for you to be behind, for first light to come up, and then for you to be in broad daylight on an airfield, planning your counterattack against an enemy force that not only has significant troops on the ground, paratroopers, heavily trained shock troops that have air superiority. I've been fortunate enough in my life never to fight in a disadvantaged position. I've fought on an even battlefield where we were 1-to-1 and we had same weapon systems. I've never been in a position where the enemy has had greater capabilities than me, and I just can't imagine it being anything apart from horrific.
Easy targets for German paratroops, and being machine gunned from overhead from planes brought over from Greece. And it obviously needed a complete switch of plan, but away out on the right flank, there was a small group of our chaps isolated, completely isolated, and they couldn't be left there. I then spoke to the platoon commander of the leading platoon, 2nd Lieutenant Charles Upham, and told him that I wanted him to...
Platoon commander, 2nd Lieutenant, most junior rank in the military. It is the first officer appointment. Quite often very young. Quite often inexperienced in battle. Good, don't get me wrong, good knowledge of how to command troops and how to command a platoon. Quite often the young platoon commanders rely heavily on the experienced NCOs, so the platoon sergeants who would have a vast amount of knowledge. But in saying that, great 2nd lieutenants use the experience of their NCOs, and it makes a more cohesive, a more efficient fighting force. So they work in partnership, absolutely. But I look back and think about some of the people who were platoon commanders for us out on the ground, and I have nothing but admiration for them. So young, so inexperienced. It's a lonely job, because you feel like, from what I've been told, you feel like it's a you versus them, because we're all enlisted soldiers. They're officers. They have to keep that professional distance away. and I have nothing but respect for them to be able to command troops on the ground like that. It's humbling looking back on it. Humbling.
Send two of his best men across to this, with my message across to this isolated group. Charles watched him then, put a corporal in charge of what was left of his platoon, and with Corporal Dave Kirk, set out frankly on this mission himself because it was too dangerous to give to anybody else, in his opinion. And they set out on a mission which, quite frankly, gave little hope of survival, much less of success. And how they succeeded, of course, is written into Victoria Cross citation.
Well, you mentioned Dave Kirk, and Charles, we have another surprise for you tonight. With us from Greymouth, your platoon corporal that morning on Crete, would you please welcome Dave Kirk.
I'm going to rewind that. What's Charles Upham's response to Dave versus his response to the opening of the show?
Dave Kirk.
His mouth open, standing up to him, big smile, looking him in the eye, taking his hand, stood up tall. That's Charles Upham.
This was the man you described as one of the finest fighting men you'd ever known, Charles.
Yes, the finest, I think.
You must have some very vivid memories of that particular dash across the countryside.
Well, Dave was amongst all his other virtues. He was one of very athletic, a very fit fellow. I remember him telling me before the war he used to play rugby union on Saturdays and league on Sundays over on the coast. And he kept
Kiwis had league.
To be able to do that.
But it was all union
But
over
Dave
your way.
was always, he always carried a Bren gun, which was a heavy gun. And,
Very accurate.
Heavier than a rifle or anything. And he could have had a lighter gun, a Tommy gun, being a NCO, but he didn't. He kept the Bren gun, of which he was a really good shot. And I always put him down, I think, as the best individual soldier I ever ran into, because
Wow.
he was...
He's emotional, bless him.
I believe he did peg out in hospital at one time, but I never saw him any time when he wasn't just bursting to go, whether it was food or whether we'd had sleep or not sleep. And that
Charles,
sort of...
you mentioned that he was a good shot, and I think there's a memory that Dave has about that dash after you'd been across to these men and told them that there was a change of plans. You had a rapid trip back to your previous position, Dave, and you came under some heavy fire on an exposed piece of land. What happened?
Yes, Charles, you possibly remember. Remember when we came upon those two machine guns open up on us? And I think we probably hold the record 50-yard dash till we struck that fold in the ground when we managed to get it to cover. But the thing that always sticks in my memory and made me laugh at the time, the only time I think I laughed on Crete, when you, as soon as we got there, your first words were very caustic and colourful condemnation of the poor shooting of the German. Well, I didn't quite see it that way because we'd just come through and the amount of lead that was whistling past my ears, I considered they were pretty good shots.
Dave, for your courage alongside Charles that day, and others on Crete, you were awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal. Brigadier Burrows, you know Charles as well as anyone. What kind of man is he?
It's a pretty difficult question to answer, Bob, but tonight you're unfolding a story about a very brave, gallant man. I think it would be a pity if he were remembered only for that. Because those of us who served with Charles know also that he was a very good leader. The men had confidence in him because of the very high standards that Charles set, both for himself and for the men under his command. They trusted him because they knew he always put their welfare, their safety before himself. They trusted him above all because he would never set them to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. Now, Charles was a fine, fine leader. And on top of that, quite frankly, he's the softest, most kind-hearted character that you'd meet in a day's march. I have great pleasure always, if I'm mixing with the chaps who served with him, to see the pride in their voices when they say, I was in old Charlie's Sea Company.
Old Charlie.
And my godfather, they've got cause to be proud. Charles, I'm sorry about this, but it does you no harm to hear a bit of truth about yourself now and again.
Well, the battle for Malomé Airfield was just one of the many historic actions that took place on Crete. And what followed, as you all drew to the embarkation beaches at Sfakia, is well recorded by the military historians. Our next guest remembers those days very well.
Charles, you're a great soldier, a good mate, and the best bloody scrounger in the business.
Do you recognise the voice?
Yes, is that Den Fountain?
Den Fountain. You may also know him as Spout. Den Fountain, your company commander on Crete from Westport, Colonel Den Fountain.
Scrounging in the military is accepted. You don't steal stuff, you just borrow it for prolonged periods, and quite often, if you don't get your hands on that bit of equipment, which is quite often kind of mission that decides the fate of the mission or not, that you need that bit of kit, you'll go and find it and scrounge it. So yes, scrounging in the military is very different from scrounging in civilian life, so don't hold it against them. All soldiers scrounge.
Well, welcome along, Den. What was this about Charles being an expert scrounger? That sounds pretty.
Here we go.
Well, Charles, I do apologise for using that word scrounger. It's not appropriate. But you were the... What's the word?
Pretty handy at coming by things, or?
He was the big chief who acquired things for the use of his own troops and the welfare of them, and also the conduct of the army. But I do assure you, he never acquired those at the expense of anybody else, Charles.
Of course, when the battle for Crete was over and the men were being withdrawn off the beaches, you had to give Charles a message that he may not have liked very much.
Well, firstly, of course, Charles had dysentery right from the time we were up in Crete Pass in Greece. And afterwards he got winged in Crete itself. And General Kippenberger, or Colonel Kippenberger at that time commanding the 20th Battalion, he instructed me that Charles had to go off that night. He wasn't to be allowed to volunteer to go off with Brigadier Burrows with the rear party on the following night. So I tucked him under my arm and we got him onto the boat and got him back to Egypt again.
Right. Well, Colonel Den Fountain, or should I say Spout, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight on This Is Your Life. Well, Charles, from Crete, as Denver said, was back to North Africa, and not long after that, news of your Victoria Cross. What we're about to show you, and knowing a bit about your character, must have been quite an ordeal, because here's the original film of Second Lieutenant Charles Upham receiving the VC from General Sir Claude Auchinleck.
General McKinley, Middle East commander, arrives to inspect the 1st Brigade of New Zealand troops formed in Egypt. For bravery in the field, he decorates 3 New Zealand soldiers. Brigadier Ingalls reads the citations. The Victoria Cross for Lieutenant Upham on the left. The DSO for Lieutenant Colonel Kippenberger. Here Upham receives his medal and ribbon.
Well, Charles, that would bring back a memory or two, I imagine. Following that presentation came the remarkable action at Minkakayam, where the New Zealand troops, surrounded by Germans, broke out to freedom, only to be savagely mauled later at Rewaisat Ridge. And your actions in those conflicts were later to earn you a 2nd Victoria Cross. But at Rewaisat Ridge, badly wounded in action, you were taken prisoner by the Germans. And that, as they say, is another story, and it's coming up after this break. Welcome back as we continue This Is Your Life, Charles Upham. Taken prisoner at Rewisad Ridge, your life hangs in the balance because of the severity of your wounds. But as they heal and you regain strength, you begin rebelling against your guards. Here's a famous picture of you, Charles. I imagine there's quite a story behind that one.
Look at that. That is almost a cheeky grin. That looks like razor wire and barbed wire all around him, just to contain him. And is that a cigarette in his mouth? This is thug life. Somebody meme this. Get the glasses on. Get the cigarette in there. This is something that I always love hearing about our troops. Not only do they fight the war, but even whenever they are taken prisoner of war, they continue to fight. They continue to try to escape. They continue to try to get away. It is legendary stuff. And knowing if you cause too much grief, you're going to get your Achilles slit, you're going to get shot. They're going to make sure that you cannot cause any more grief. To carry on doing that, you are some of the most baddest people on the earth. You are BMFs. Badass mother.
But you're involved in quite a variety of escape schemes, and eventually the Germans decide there's only one place for you. The Germans called it a Sonderlager, the special escape-proof camp, but it became known simply as Colditz. Now, your arrival there was closely watched by a man who is today the personal and private secretary to Her Majesty the Queen Mother. As a member of her personal household, he lives at her residence, Clarence House, in St James's Palace, London. But back in Colditz, he was the camp adjutant. And we took our cameras along to Clarence House for this special message from Sir Martin Gilliatt.
Charles, I'm delighted to send you greetings on this exciting day when I know that you've been picked out for the This Is Your Life program in New Zealand. After now 41 years, I remember only too well that day, a Saturday in October 1944, when I was adjutant at Colditz, and it was reported to me that a new arrival had just come into the camp. He came from New Zealand, and apparently his name was Upham. None of us had ever heard of you, Charles, at that time. All this business about 2 VCs was totally unknown to us.
It wouldn't have made a difference. People that you work with, and I've said this in the past, people you work with don't give a shit about Gallantry Awards. It's just the right opportunity, and you being in the right mindset that means that people receive Gallantry Awards. It also, so many other bits, people writing the right citation with the right final sentences. There are so many things. It does not make you different from anybody else in that prison. And I would like to think that soldiers were aware of that and just did not give a shit. All of my mates, they made no difference to me whenever I got my award. And I hope that I done the same in return. I hope it didn't change me in my professional world to any degree. I hope so.
Having recently had the bad experience of the Germans planting a traitor in our camp, and we not having taken any notice of this, he then managed to hand over to the Germans details of all our escape schemes and tunnels. I was determined this shouldn't happen again.
Not just one.
So I got hold of the New Zealander I knew best in the camp, a splendid doctor called Fred Moody. And I asked him to go down and check that the Upham we knew had just arrived was a bona fide New Zealand officer. Well, Fred went down and saw you and reported back in a few minutes that he did know all about you, that you were a proper chap, and that you must be allowed into the camp and should become a friend of all of us. And this you did, and we were together at Colditz until the end of the war from our point of view, when we were released by the Americans. I wish very much that you'd been over for the Colditz reunion a few weeks ago, but I hope I may see you in this country next year when there is a reunion for the VCGC Association. Meanwhile, Charles, all possible good wishes, and I hope we'll have a splendid occasion this evening.
Ladies, gents, I think we would be doing him a bit of a disservice if we didn't just check out the family and see the life that he led since such a traumatic and eventful war. Let's find out a bit more about Charles Upham since.
Please welcome the Upham daughters, Amanda, Virginia and Caroline, accompanied by your two eldest grandsons, David and Charles, and of course... And of course, that lovely bride from Barton-on-Sea, Molly McTamney, now Molly Upham. We thought the night, yes. We knew the night wouldn't be complete for Charles. We didn't bring his family along to join in this reunion, and you'll have a chance to have plenty of family discussions after the show. We thank you for joining us tonight, the Upham family.
Ladies, gents, thanks for checking in once again. Amazing stories from an amazing man. I hope we can bring his story to life a little more. One of only 3 FECI and bar recipients. Incredible stuff. Good to see somebody else having only daughters. I thought it was me who just faced that challenge. Yeah, he had 3 of them, so much better man than me. Ladies, gents, don't forget the 2,000 subscriber giveaway is happening now. It's live. All you have to do is subscribe and comment in the video that I will be linking at the end of this one. Thanks for checking in. I will see you again very soon in another video, but before then, comment below. Let's meet in the chat box. What did you think of Charles Upham? Is there anybody else you would recommend me reviewing? I'll catch you very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.